Yo, yo, yo. Hey, besties. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're located. Happy Transit Chat Sunday. Woo! I don't know about y'all. I can tell that there's a lot of Cancer transits in the sky because I'm tired. I'm so tired. Are y'all tired? Yo, I'm exhausted. I'm both exhausted because Cancer transits reminding me that I have a body. And then this dang Leo Mars, my Mars return, also making me keep going. I can't slow down. I can't stop. I can't do a little bit less. I'm just doing too much. Just a combination of doing too much and being tired about it. So I see y'all are also feeling the same way. Look, we'll get through somehow. We just got one more week of Mars and Leo, which I'm gonna be real. This is the most I've enjoyed a Mars and Leo transit in the last few years. Granted, the last one that we had, Saturn was in Aquarius, and that was pure ass. And then the other one, Saturn was in Capricorn, but this one has been the least terrible, in my opinion. And I'm going to miss it because as soon as Mars moves into Virgo on the 28th, which is next Monday, child, we're not going to know which way is up. So enjoy this week. We got a lot going on this week. We have Venus square Mars, Venus in Taurus still, but only until Saturday. She moves into Gemini. But we got a Venus in Taurus square Mars in Leo on Tuesday, I think. And then Thursday, is it Thursday? I put it in the description of this video. But excuse me, Wednesday, Venus square Mars. Thursday, Sun trine Saturn. So Sun in Cancer, trine Saturn in Pisces. And then Thursday, we also have the new moon in Cancer at 7 degrees Cancer. So if you've got any planets at 7 degrees of cardinal signs, we're looking at you. And then Saturday, Venus moves into Gemini. And then we will have the moon in Leo as well, conjunct both Mars and the South Node. It's the South Node, right? In Leo? Yes, South Node in Leo. What's also happening throughout this week, and especially today, tomorrow, probably Tuesday, Mars is conjoined the South Node officially at this point. So it's looking like kind of a weird week to me. I have some thoughts in a general sense about these Cancer and Pisces transits together. And then the rest, I'm sure will just intuitively fall into the narrative. But I'm planning on pulling cards today. And I'm actually planning on pulling these cards today from the Black Tarot. I just had an urge to use a different deck. I've been pulling cards at work with my friend and using my Gentle Tarot deck, but I left it at work, so I don't have it here. Otherwise, I would use that one. But I haven't used my Black Tarot deck, I think, at all on live. And I need to develop more of a relationship with this set. So I'm going to be doing that today. How are you guys doing? I see y'all here in the chat. Good morning, good afternoon to Priya. Hello to Desiree. Hey, Jim. Jim is here early. Okay, period. Good to see you guys. Yes. Any other updates I have? My watch did a thing. My Apple Watch, it's sitting over there. I should have brought it over here to show you, but the front screen just straight up came off while I was at the pool yesterday. And Mercury retrograde is in my second house. So it's just been a lot of me having to spend money on things. I got my bike service, like I told you guys about, and I've been back to the shop 3 times. So I just got it back yesterday, yesterday. So hopefully that's it. I don't have to take it back anymore, but I will have to get the new Apple Watch at some point. And unless somebody has one they don't want and you want to send it to me, let me know. But yeah, that stuff's going on, and we're just praying that we can get to and through the rest of this year without any car issues. Knock on wood. But other than that, doing all right. How about y'all? Oh, Mattia's here. Mattia. Oh my gosh. Mattia, right? I don't know why I'm getting you mixed up with another Mattia. But good morning to you. And Daria, good morning to you. And also Mattia, good morning to your whole household. Tell everyone I said hello. It was so good to see you guys over the last couple of months. Yeah, before I get started, my books are still open, and it looks like I have a lot of availability actually for August. So if you want to get in next month, now is a good time to open up my bookings and grab a spot. I think that's all I got right now. So let's get into the astro. I listened to a couple podcasts this morning to try and figure out what are people talking about and what's a common theme between all of these conversations that I could latch onto. I listened to what's that podcast called? What is it called? Oh, Selective Ignorance by Mandy B. I listened to that one where she was talking about her book, No Holes Barred, which is a lot to do with sex and sexuality for her. I also listened to a conspirituality podcast where they were talking about the, what's it called? The Jubilee episode, I guess, that happened recently. That was fat people versus fit people, or fat people versus thin people, or something like that. And, Jubilee is pure rage bait, but they, on the conspirituality podcast, in conversation around those episodes, had a really good statement that I wanted to talk about that I think frames a lot of our conversation for today. And I also listened a little bit to a relationship school podcast where I got my coaching certification from. And he was talking about when you are the coach and you're having to coach someone who comes in mostly complaining about their partner. So the astro context for all of this is the sky currently, obviously. We have now the sun in Cancer while Mercury is retrograding in Cancer, and the Cancer new moon this week. We also have Saturn now retrograde in Pisces. We have Venus still in Taurus, like we said, the rest of this week, soon to move into Gemini. And we also have Mars in Leo for the rest of this week, soon to move into Virgo. So combination of mutable and cardinal stuff, a little bit of fixed, but the fixed is on its way out. The cardinal and the mutable on its way in. Cardinal and mutable together is giving control and power stuff mixed with discernment and truth stuff. Okay, truth and trust. As far as the sign Cancer goes, how I'm thinking about it today is actually, the first thought that I had this morning listening to all of these things was the cardinal and mutable combination between Pisces and Cancer, where there's a question that I have about how we tell ourselves certain stories or narratives as a way to inspire us to act or behave a certain way, and how we also justify our actions using narratives that suit our biases or that suit a story that we want to believe. And there's a way that we use narratives to emotionally regulate, which I think we've talked about before. But mostly how we feel in control of our circumstances at this time, especially emotionally, is through the narratives that we tell ourselves about our bodies, our feelings, our emotions, and the experiences that we're having. So a lot of what is true to you is what's helping you feel a sense of control over your situation, whatever your situation is between your Pisces and Cancer's houses. So that's where my mind was at this morning. Cardinal signs and Cancer in particular, I think, can be, on the one hand, very much you being at the will of your body to some extent, being motivated by your feelings and really just kind of being dragged around with the tides of your emotions. And sometimes also acting out or reacting in response to something that's making you feel a way. And I think for Cancer for all cardinal signs, I should say, not just Cancer. For all cardinal signs, the trend that I notice is that cardinal signs reach for something outside of themselves in order to feel control and regulated on the inside. I mean, this is something all people do, of course, but it's a cardinal sign theme and response. And I also think that when we feel dysregulated on the inside, we do reach for something outside of us to feel a sense of control, feel like we can change our circumstances, or we try to change something about ourselves. I tend to put Cancer on the side of a sign that wants the world to be responsive to them. But I also think we learn how to be responsive to ourselves during Cancer transits, which I think we talked about last week. So just learning how to respond to your emotions is a big Cancer theme. And also our relationship with control, what we feel we have control and power over, also related to Cancer themes. So the quote from the Conspirituality podcast that I wanted to talk about was about these overlaps between control and identity, and the stories that we tell ourselves that either make us feel better about ourselves or a situation, or that inspire us to change something about ourselves or the situation. And the context was about, good morning, Lo. Good afternoon, Lo. The context of this was that, like I said, the Jubilee video that was talking about fat versus fit. And the one that they got this quote from was from the ever so terrible Myron Gaines from the Fresh and Fit podcast, who's super duper misogynist, right wing, fascist pipeline podcaster type dude, the worst ever. And he was in conversation with one of the other guys from the fat team on Jubilee, and they were having a back and forth about, like, the question at hand was, have you, and also trigger warning for this because this is sensitive topic, but this is not the main topic of the conversation, just framing context for why this quote hit so hard. And basically the question that both of these guys were coming up to answer was that, do you feel disgust whenever you look at fat bodies? Obviously the conversation was about fat phobia. And one of the guys came up, he basically said yes and said a lot of other derogatory things. And then the other guy on the fat side was like, do you know why you feel that way? And then the guy responded with a bunch of fat phobia, basically. But the main thing about him was making this conversation about control and saying that, like, if you, it's showing something about, like, a lack of self-control or a lack of discipline or whatever else. So terrible, very triggering. I hated every second of listening to it. Would not recommend anybody watch anything by Jubilee ever. But if you're ever so curious and you want to be rage baited, feel free to go watch the rest of the episode. Good morning, Keys. So as the commentators of the Conspirituality podcast were talking about this topic, one of the guys was talking about Myron, the guy who has all of the derogatory things to say about everyone ever, was speaking about how this guy and the way that he answered these questions really says more about him and his relationship with himself and his own body and his own upbringing than it does about anybody else in the room. And the statement that he said, in quotes, he said, him asking the other guy asking the question, do you even know why you're saying that? It shows just how much that Myron is incapable of doing anything but externalizing behaviors, and every feeling that he has about anything has to be turned into some kind of crusade of control. He's basically announcing himself to be someone who has top shelf fragility and a constant self-defense against the ghosts of his own mind. So said another way, how I heard that quote whenever he said it was like, this part about Myron being incapable of doing anything but externalizing his behaviors, to me, read very much like he has narratives in his head about what it means to be fat that he is projecting onto everyone else because someone told it to him first and he internalized those narratives and now has to make it everybody else's problem that he's internalized this narrative and that he lives his life in a way that keeps him imprisoned to these ideas that were at one point projected onto him. So he uses those narratives as a way to make himself feel superior to other people. But it also, in doing that, in making these comments about fat people, he's also revealing his own insecurities, his own self-hatred, his own fragility, as he said, top shelf fragility. And he's revealing how much he's constantly in a battle with his own self about his identity and his beliefs about the world. So it's really not about other people, but he's imposing these beliefs onto other people, really as a way to kind of reveal his own biases and his own struggles that he deals with and trying to make it everybody else's problem. So to me, that whole just conversation, it brings in the Leo and the Taurus of it all, with societal standards and projections and the expectations and the expectation, and also whenever your differences are visible, how it makes it feel like your insecurities are on blast to other people. But then also on the projection side, shows that people viewing you brings up their own stuff about themselves, which we usually talk about when we talk about Scorpio placements. You know, if people exist in a way where they physically can't hide their differences, especially if their differences are socially unacceptable, how it feels like you're just kind of a walking target for everybody else's bullshit because it's easy for them to make you the scapegoat. So I feel like there's a lot of that going on in this conversation, but just this idea of control being at the center of it. That's basically like, you know, you should be able to control it. And my joke lately, since planets have been in cardinal signs, has been control it. When people's feelings are a little bit too transparent or on blast, it's like, hey, control it. So yeah, all of that to say, it's that conversation made it kind of clear to me that we are in a phase right now, and I think increasingly so with this Cancer full moon or new moon, and moving into more Cancer transits with the sun being there now as well. And then, like I said, this Mercury retrograde in Cancer, both being a conversation point about things that happened during the Mars retrograde in Cancer, and being a conversation starter for things that will come up when Jupiter moves into Cancer towards the end of the year to station retrograde, and all of next year whenever Jupiter fully moves through Cancer. So that's why I'm focusing so much on Cancer transits today. Cancer, whenever we're talking about, just to circle back, when we're talking about controlling your body, controlling your emotions, controlling how you get your needs met and who meets them, and controlling how you are responded to in relationships, feeling a little bit needier during these times. Obviously, our very Western, very individualistic culture has a lot of narratives around people who need things. People who have needs are villainized in Western society because, as someone even said in this terrible interview or terrible Jubilee episode, like seeing people with needs as like a drain on resources, or seeing people, this comes up, you know, with disability a lot as well, rhetoric around useless eaters, like all of these things of making people having basic fundamental needs into something that they should be shamed for. Seems like a big part of this season of conversation. And then the ways that we internalize having needs and needing things, and how it brings up so many different themes around worth and earning and deserving. But also there's a question of like needs versus wants, right? Or things that you maybe just want because it feels good in a moment, versus things that will give you like lasting and sustainable pleasure, or things that are actually like satiating versus things that just give like a temporary feeling of relief. And addiction is usually something that comes up as well. Just coping, the ways that we cope and numb in general with alcohol or with other substances, with drugs, with weed, with sugar, with fried foods, just whatever it is. Like there's so many things in this society that we reach for to kind of temporarily pacify us, because the horrors at large are just so widespread and broad and come in many forms. You know, we're constantly under attack by this consumer society thing. I always talk about consumerism with Cancer transits too, because the consumerism of it all, it does have a temporary sense of relief, the dopamine hit that comes knowing that you have an Amazon package on the way. And you know, like getting paid and then immediately being able to go purchase the things that you want immediately. And just, I don't know, so many ways that we are, on the one hand, put into this position of need, of constant perpetual need, because we're constantly being deprived and withheld of the things that we actually need. and sometimes being in positions where we do have a lot of access to a lot of different things, but because our rights are constantly under threat, or we've got ICE raids going on, there's a genocide still going on, and we're having to bear witness to it. We're reaching for control in all of these different ways outside of us to make us feel better in the moment, but struggling to actually feel good because of all of the things that are out of our control. So there's just a lot of coping that happens. And I think last week when I was talking about us consuming things within their proper context, there's also a question now this week at this new moon that is like, what is it that you actually need whenever you do reach for the things that you're consuming? Like, if you have a habit or a compulsive behavior or an impulsive behavior or whatever it is, a pattern that you find yourself in, or even a dependence on a particular type of substance, or just whatever thing that's bringing you pleasure or that brings you chaos or whatever it is, really asking yourself like, okay, I know by doing this thing, it's not going to make me feel better in the long run. It's just going to make me feel better short term, and then there might be consequences for it after that. So really asking yourself, why do I feel like I need this right now? Like, what is it that I'm actually trying to get out of doing this thing that I'm doing that I know is basically a temporary fix for a larger issue? And I think that's such a hard question to answer, because a lot of our larger problems, our larger sociological problems and political problems are a group effort. And when everybody's not on the same page about what the solutions should be, that I think makes us just feel even more out of control. And then we start trying to control each other, right? We try to control how each other thinks and how each other feels, and try to use shame to manipulate people, or try to use our own, try to like weaponize weaponize different parts of ourselves and the value that we bring to relationships. Like there's a lot of emotional manipulation that happens within this, this container of, we all have needs and we're just trying to get them met somehow. All these different strategies to just get our needs met. And sometimes they do have negative impacts on other people. And sometimes we need them to kind of snap other people out of their stupor, out of their feeling of powerlessness, or just out of their dissociation from their own needs. So I don't know. Not a particular answer that I have in all of that, but these are all things I'm thinking about with these transits that I'm hoping the cards will bring clarity to. So that as an introduction, let's get into these cards and just see what the fuck going on. This is constantly a problem. Yes. Wow, I feel bad for Scorpios having to deal with the projections all day long. But you know what? Tauruses have to deal with it too in a different way. Because then it turns into there being an expectation of you to fit, because you can't conceal certain differences as well, or because your differences are not acknowledged for whatever reason. And so then people project onto you being socially acceptable all the time and having to perform within those, perform a version of the projections that people are then placing on you. So it's really not just Scorpios, it's just Scorpio and Taurus. They both do it in their own ways. And man, like, if there's anything I've learned from Jupiter and Taurus last year while I was in a Scorpio perfection, and the little bit of Jupiter and Taurus before, the little bit of Jupiter and Taurus while I've been in this Jupiter perfection, is that Taurus is arguably one of the most self-deprecating signs of the fixed signs. Like, holy shit. I did not know this about you guys. I thought it was a totally different thing. And that's why I'm starting to really reject the whole Taurus is the police thing. Because while I understand what we mean when we say that, Taurus, people with Taurus placements, like, yo, my Leo is always like, hey, stand up. You're better than this, bitch. You are fine as fuck, and you should own that. Quit letting these people shrink you into docility. Stop it. Stand up. So I hope that Mars and Leo has been helpful to you guys for that, because holy shit. And it's not to say that the other signs aren't. I think the other signs, you know, Aquarius especially, kind of being known for shrinking and self-deprecating. But I think the self-deprecation of Taurus is different than the self-deprecation of Aquarius. Sorry to drag y'all like this, but I just had to get that out there because, woo! I do not like it for y'all. Y'all are way too cute to be putting up with that shit. Enough. Enough. Be the bad bitch that you are. Okay? Anybody trying to make you not feel like a bad bitch is jealous. Jealous. Okay? Remember that. Let's get into these cards, baby. As a Taurus rising, thank you. You are so welcome. You are so welcome. Because, child, if it was me and if it was me and I didn't have Mars and Leo, I would have been died. Would have been died. I don't know how y'all stand it. And you shouldn't stand it. Don't put up with that shit. Yeah. You are that girl. And you should know it. And you are not the police. You are being policed. Okay? Y'all need to be like that meme. Y'all need to be like this. I need y'all to be like this. This right here, this is y'all. This is the part when I say I don't wanna. I'm stronger than I've been before. This is the part where I break free. Cause I can't resist it no more. Yeah, that should be you. Let's go. All right. Woo. Only standards you got to measure up to are your own. Nice little parting gift from this Venus and Taurus transit. Ciao. Oopsie. Yeah, I ate that up. I'm so glad. Woo! So, oh, that was a great shuffle. Something about a good shuffle just really makes me feel wonderful. All right. Let me get this off the screen. Let me see what else y'all said. Cancer placements and people's obsessions with observing their body. So true. It's first house moon. Absolutely. Especially with Leo and or the sun. Absolutely. Jupiter and Taurus wiped all that performance out of me. Period. Yes. All my Taurus girlies in the chat. I ride for y'all. Y'all may be in my 12th house, but we're still friends. All right. To our elevated my elevated and healed ancestors, because they're working with me. Elevated and healed ancestors in spirit. Thank you so much for this day and for the ability for all of us to come together. I come to you to inquire about these Cancer transits and particularly this week's Cancer new moon. Would love any insights about this transit, what to look out for and how to navigate it. What are we meant to learn from this new moon and this Mercury retrograde, especially as it all is in this trine with Saturn in Pisces. Please deliver us a clear and concise message. It will help us in the coming weeks and months so we can move with intention through these transits. Ooh. Surprised Samaje haven't showed up yet. Can't they sense me pulling cards? All right. All right, let's go. We have here ooh, who that is? Five of Swords, period. Man, this card is haunting me in my sleep. Five of Swords as our context. I pulled this card this week for myself in a different context, so that's weird. It must really be time for me to figure out what the hell this card means for real. All right, Five of Swords, our card on the bottom. We have more swords. Ace of Swords, Ace of Knives. Okay. We have Three of Baskets, which I believe baskets are cups. Very cute. Love to see it. And finally, we have Ten of Wands. Ooh. Interesting. I love that card. The way that it's drawn in this deck. Weird. Okay. Let's talk through this then. And I will be using the book since I'm using a different deck. I'll use it for part of it, but I'll start with the general understanding of each card. So Five of Swords is our card on the bottom here. Five of Swords. I had a dream about this card this week, and the dream basically had something to do with like, okay, so fives are usually conflict in general. Five of Swords would lead me to believe there's like a mental conflict of some kind or an ideological conflict or conflict using words, language, things like that. But when I was thinking about this card this week, there was this idea of like, okay, so you won this conflict or this battle of ideas or this thing that you've been imagining in your head. Like, let's say you won, you achieved the thing. Okay, now what? And the now what comes from this idea of like really striving or not really striving, but I'll have to see how the author of this deck talks about this card, but in the Gentle Tarot deck, when I pulled this card, it was a person climbing to the top of this mountain, grabbing for lightning bolts, and there was this idea of like, okay, so you've achieved all the stuff, you've climbed to the top of this mountain, you've wanted to climb to the top of this mountain all of this time, and now you've gotten there. Now what? Like, was it all worth it? What was really the intention of doing that, and was it worth it? So there's something about like, was it worth it? I know in my This Might Hurt deck, the Five of Swords is like, you won, but you were an asshole about it. So there's this question of like, was it really worth it, that I think comes with this card that speaks more to our motivation for wanting to achieve something or go after something or to win something. And if once you actually do win the thing, like you're kind of left with this empty feeling that's like, did I even really need to do all that? Was it even really worth it? So that's kind of how I've been thinking about this card lately. This as the context, but I want to see what the Black Tarot deck guidebook has to say about it. So I'm going to pull it up. Five of Knives. Winning at all costs. Conflict. So they're talking about, I'll hold the card up still. Two individuals battle as a third watches from his throne. In this fight, there are no winners. Not even the person on the throne has gained. Onlookers watch in fear, enjoyment, and sorrow. The Five of Knives warns you not to get so lost in the battle that you forget what you're fighting for. The chaos stems from a lack of communication. Ooh, interesting. The Five of Knights asks you to pick your battles. Many battles are rooted in inequitable systems and lies of scarcity created by those who benefit from us fighting amongst ourselves. Any pain that the individuals inflict on each other is rhythmically mirrored. Stop acting in your own self interest. Make a different choice and drop your swords. Expand your sense of self. See the larger view of who you are. Our self is our neighbor. Our self is the world. Our self is the universe. Well, if that ain't everything that I just talked about in the lead up to this conversation, like what? Uh, that's wild. Idaria says an Eagles player reflected on winning the Super Bowl and thinking that he would ride that high for a minute. Turns out it lasted 2 days and realized that it's the playing and the process that he enjoyed so much. Absolutely. I think that also came up in the Gentle Tarot description where they were talking about it's less about the accomplishment itself and more about the journey. Like, who were you along the ride for that? Because sometimes you become a different person in the process. It's making me think about Big Brother because Big Brother just started as well. And Big Brother, you have to do so much lying and manipulating and deceiving to win that it's like if someone were to tell you that you would be good at Big Brother and they're not just talking about you being good at the games, they're really saying that you'd be really good at lying and deceiving and manipulating people. And that's ultimately what you have to do in order to win the game. So it's like in the process of this game, and you're being a terrible person to get to the end and you win $750,000, like, was it really worth it to become that person along the way in order to win this big prize at the end, or did it really just like kind of kill your soul in the process? So I really, as far as the sky is concerned right now, and we're talking about Cancer and Pisces transit specifically, the line of this description that says that chaos stems from a lack of communication feels really loud to me, because I think, whenever they're talking about, just before that line, they say, the Five of Knives warns you not to get so lost in battle that you forget what you're fighting for. It's making me think about like the battle for truth, and truth as a form of feeling like you're in control right now. And if you can withhold truth from other people, you can manipulate a situation in your favor. And vice versa, if someone else is withholding truth from you or withholding communication from you, that gives them power in the dynamic, because the other person is left wondering how and what they can even do to resolve a situation, whenever whatever needs to be cleared up or whatever needs to be confronted head on is not being confronted because it's not being communicated. So I think that fits in the context of a Mercury retrograde as well. So there's something here about communicating, obviously, instead of being silent, and communication or lack of communication as a form of control seems relevant to the astro. If we're going to take this card into that topic. And then the rest of it talking about how we can get stuck in these individual battles with each other, reaching for control, much of like what we do on Twitter all the time, arguing over ideas and concepts and language and all this other stuff, instead of actually organizing and confronting the issues in real life. We'd rather just sit and argue with each other because that's more within our reach. It's more convenient. It's more in our control, so to speak, than actually tackling larger issues. And that's what the powers that be would like. They would love to keep us divided and fighting laterally than punching up the way that we should be. So Ace of Knives, then, in our situation position. So in the context of this whole of this conflict, there is an opportunity. Aces are always opportunities, new beginnings, offerings to do something new, do something different. Ace of Knives, we're still sticking with the knife theme. So that card, anytime it comes up for me, is usually about speak your truth. It may not be speak your truth in the same way that Queen of Swords is or Queen of Knives is, but it's speak your truth in just that you got to start the conversation somewhere, and starting the conversation from a place of honesty. Whatever that looks like, even if it's messy, like you just have to start. somewhere. Start talking, start voicing things, start vocalizing. And I guess this being in the situation position, there must be something left unsaid. Which is so funny because on Instagram, whenever I made the announcement that I was going to go live, I used this screenshot that I saw the other day from a tweet where someone said, "Motherfucker, we both know it's an elephant in here. Be cool." Like, because of the whole elephant in the room thing, which to me is very Pisces. There's an elephant in the room. We can all feel it. The presence of this thing that none of us are talking about, that we're all refusing to talk about. And instead of talking about it, we're all just ignoring it and pretending that it's not there when obviously it's taking up so much space emotionally, psychically, psychologically, physically in this room. So that feels, the whole concept of there being an elephant in the room that nobody's addressing feels very Saturn and Pisces to me. It's like we all know there's a truth here that we're ignoring. We're refusing to talk about it for some reason because, like I've said before, if we were to talk about it, then something about us, something about this relationship, something about our situation would have to change. And am I truly in a place emotionally where I'm ready to accept and move with that change? Or am I in a place where I don't feel like I'm ready to move and change? Like, if you're in the place where you're not ready to move and change, you're not going to do anything different. But if you are in the place where you're ready to move and change, you're going to Ace of Knives and you're going to open up the can of worms that is that conversation that you haven't been having. So let's see what the book has to say about Ace of Swords. I just know this is eating somebody up. And if you're listening now or later, I apologize. Except, no, I don't. I'll say what I said. Ace of Knives. Ace of Knives being about breakthroughs and clarity. A woman stands with a city silhouetted behind her. She holds a knife, prepared for anything headed her way. A raven flies above, showcasing its ability to survive the sun, hinting at a change in consciousness. The Ace of Knives is about stepping back into your power. The woman is headed towards new beginnings. It's time to channel this new energy and allow it to help you in your decision making. This card asks you to be open to different perspectives, approach situations rationally, putting aside temptations and emotions. This new clarity may call upon you to speak your truth or voice new boundaries. Do not fear using your voice or your words. So, pow. It's giving cut through the bullshit. Cut through it. Tell the truth. And see what happens. All right, the obstacle here. This is interesting. The obstacle in this situation, I think I already know where this is going. The obstacle in this situation is the Three of Baskets. So Three of Baskets is usually the Three of Cups. Three of Cups is generally a positive card. It speaks to like close relationships and sometimes like your relationship with your spirits, your ancestors. It can speak to sometimes gossiping with the girlies or being in celebration with some of your close friends. Less communal to me than Six of Cups, but a little bit more intimate. So something about close relationships. And what immediately comes to mind with this being in the obstacle card is trying to manage other people's emotions, trying to manage other people's feelings because you're close. And I know for me, this may just be a me thing in this deck and me reading for myself, but I know for me, sometimes it is hard to speak my truth because I am worried about the impact that my words will have on other people. And even if I'm telling my version of the truth or my experience, I'm speaking in first person. That was another tweet that I took a screenshot of where someone said, yes, that's why I spoke in first person, because she was speaking her thoughts and her opinions on her experience or her beliefs or her opinions or whatever it is. And other people don't like that sometimes. Other people get uncomfortable with you speaking your truth sometimes because your truth likely implies something about them, or at least that's how they're going to receive it. Sometimes that is true. Sometimes we are speaking to our experience and saying, hey, you're doing this thing that you're doing this thing, and every time you do this thing, I feel this way. So there's a relationship between this thing you're doing and the way it makes me feel. There's also a relationship between this thing I'm doing and the way it makes you feel. Unfortunately, because we're humans and we're one big nervous system, we all make each other feel things sometimes. Sometimes it's not intentional. You know, sometimes the truth of why you do what you do is different than the way that the other person is perceiving or the story that they're imposing on why you do the things that you do. But if neither of you ever talk about it, how is anybody supposed to know? It's just going to be a whole lot of managing each other's feelings. And managing each other's feelings is not the same as caring for each other's feelings. You know what I mean? Managing each other's feelings and emotional responses is not the same as empathy or compassion. So when people be out here talking about, I'm an empath. No. Well, maybe you are, right? A lot of people aren't, but maybe you are. And maybe there's a lack of boundaries, a lack of emotional boundaries here, where you've now taken on and taken responsibility for everyone else's feelings to the extent that are beyond a healthy level of doing so. And it's not like, when I say this, I mean there's a way of like trying to keep people from feeling their own feelings, because their feelings are information to them as well about the relationship that you're in. You know, your feelings are giving you information about the relationship you're in, and their feelings are giving them information about the relationship that you're in. And if you're doing things to keep the other person from feeling their authentic feelings, you are obstructing their truth and their ability to tap into their intuition about a situation. You don't want to do that. Those are kind of the things we're talking about with emotional manipulation. It's not always that you're trying to get someone to respond or react to you in a certain way, although I will say with Cancer transits going on right now, that is also a big thing potentially. But there is the aspect of shielding someone from the truth of their own feelings, whatever those feelings are, especially if they're like shame or guilt or disapproval or rejection or something like that. Like, shielding people from those emotions is a way of withholding information from them, because you're keeping them from being able to get information from themselves, if that makes sense. So that's my take on that being in the obstacle position. Let's see what the book says about Three of Baskets. This, I don't know about y'all, this is hitting a little close to home for me, for things that I went through in the last week and things I'm observing around me. Okay, Three of Baskets. I'll show y'all the other side of my face this time. Three of Baskets about collaboration and support. And remember, this is in the obstacle position. Three women rest on a blanket, enjoying grand food and grander company. They understand that one of the most significant forms of wealth is mutual support. The Three of Baskets is a call to celebrations and reunions. It's about reveling in wins of all levels. Oh, reveling in wins of all levels. It's time to give and receive, hold and be held, support and be supported. You are enough. You have always been enough. Allow yourself to be loved as you are and to love others as they are. Embrace the equitable exchange of giving a lot, but also receiving a lot. The Three of Baskets asks you to focus on how your individual gifts can be amplified as a whole. Consider how you can celebrate others in mind, body, and spirit. Connect with a tribe that uplifts you. Take time to create space for sheer joy and love with others. Walk in alignment where all can prosper and flourish. I think the only thing that I would add about this card being in the middle and being underneath the context of the Five of Knives is that it's not very relational or communal to step over everybody else in order to... Actually, I'm going to say this another way, because the more succinct phrase that came to mind was, do you want to be right or do you want to be in relationship? Because if Five of Swords is talking about basically winning this battle at all cost, and the cost is your relationships, then you could also argue that the cost of not speaking up is your relationships. So valuing and prioritizing relationships, being willing to do conflict and repair and things like that, those should be viewed as those should be viewed as forms of care and trust. Like, it's a huge display of trust to show someone that you're willing to do conflict with them. And if you're not willing to do conflict with someone, if you would rather let the elephant take up space in the room rather than addressing it directly, then that probably does speak to mistrust in that relationship. And in that case, the battle becomes more about wanting your truth to be heard and validated than it does about any kind of active or decisive repair actually happening, or any kind of mutual understanding of their truth and your truth, and whatever the overall truth of the situation is, and how to actually like remedy the situation. So the final card we have here is Ten of Wands. Ten of Wands in the solution position, which is an interesting place for this card to be, but I think this card is usually about if I'm reading this card in the context of the spread, obviously, but in the context of Three of Cups being in the middle, this makes me think about that whole conversation around being a burden or feeling burdened, carrying more than your share, doing more than you actually have the capacity for. It could speak to the hyper-individualism of it all, trying to do it all yourself and just kind of being burnt out, hitting a wall, and realizing you can't do it all by yourself anymore. So if this is in the solution position, and usually the solution to this card is to put something down, then I would say that in the context of this spread, this does speak to how you do have to let go of some of the expectations or the projections that other people are placing onto you, or if it's somebody else's voice in your head that you've been carrying all this time, to like set that down because it's not yours to carry. Like, that's somebody else's stuff. You don't have to keep carrying it. You don't have to internalize it. I think it's speaking to letting go of control a little bit as well, and kind of being open to the unknown of what might happen if you were to set down all of these burdens that you're not supposed to be carrying. The burden of making yourself responsible for everybody else's feelings and constantly being in the caretaker position instead of interdependency, which is a sweet spot between being overly enmeshed and hyper independent. It's very tricky to get to this place though, because it's hard to get into right relationship with what is yours to carry and what is yours to let go of or set down, what is somebody else's to carry. That kind of makes me think about the episode I was listening to about when people come to coaching sessions, constantly talking about the other person. And what we're instructed to do in that situation is say like, hey, I'm noticing that you're talking a lot about, for example, your partner, but you haven't really told me much about you. So when this other person is doing all of this stuff, how does that make you feel? What comes up for you when you're having this experience with this other person? Cool. What do you want out of this situation or this dynamic? Without even in the context of coaching, what do you want out of the situation, regardless of what the other person may want or need? And then how can you get what you need while also acknowledging that there is another person in this relationship who may or may not be willing to change, Because I think whenever we think that we have to change in order for a relationship to move in one direction or another, a lot of times what we imagine is that we have to kind of allow or enable the other person to basically not change, or we have to allow or enable or just continue putting up with these behaviors in this other person that we don't like. But the reality is, when we say the empowerment and the personal responsibility that comes from you recognizing how you're showing up in a relationship and how you need to change in order for the relationship to change, a lot of that does look like being more authentic, speaking your truth, establishing boundaries with yourself about what you will and won't tolerate in a relationship, in terms of being on the receiving end of things. Like, are you just going to sit and keep taking it, or are you going to actually get up and do something about the fact that this person is treating you this way? Sometimes the solution is that you need to leave the relationship. Sometimes the solution is that you have to accept the relationship for what it is because you're not willing to change and neither are they. And sometimes you have to accept that by you changing and establishing boundaries and standing up for yourself that the other person then has to make a choice. They're either going to change or they're going to lose you. And it's, again, not about emotional manipulation. It's about authenticity, self-acceptance, and in this case, dignity and self-respect, which, like we were talking about at the start of this reading. Like, it's not, if we're talking about this obstacle of it being mutually beneficial for you to be in a relationship, you can't carry everything. It's not mutually beneficial for you to carry everything. They got to carry some stuff too. And vice versa. It's not mutually beneficial for them to carry everything when whatever things it is that they think that they're carrying, because you got to carry some stuff too. So let's see what the damn books say. Getting all fired up. 10 of Wands. Let's go. I feel like I'm talking really fast too. 10 of Wands. Burden and responsibility. A woman walks with a baby on her back, bags in her hands, and a pile of collected sticks on her head. She bears a heavy load and has an overwhelming number of commitments and responsibilities. This card carries humanitarian energy on an individual, community, or collective level. Although giving is an act of love, although giving is an act of love that our world needs, be wary of giving too much of yourself. Don't allow getting caught up in the hustle and bustle to become an excuse to hide from the things you'd rather not address or process. I don't know who needed to hear that, but you needed to hear that. I felt that real strong in my chest. The 10 of Wands reminds us to avoid becoming exploited in service to others. Woo! Whether the burden you are carrying is your own or others, it is essential to find a release, child. Ultimately, you must ensure that your cup is constantly being refilled and that what you give out to the world can be sourced from the overflow of the saucer. Your cup must always be full. You are not your achievements and successes, so take time to savor life. You are not, remember that rest is also revolutionary. Hello? Yo. Let me just everybody drink some water real quick. Just I don't even know what else to say. That was loud as hell. Why was that so loud for? I'm in this a lot. I'm really getting ate up here. No, for real. I'm sitting here gagged. This resonates a little too much. Also, hello, Heart. Welcome. Hello, why are you coming for me? This is so validating. Thank you so much. You're so welcome. Literally just said last night that I don't want to achieve anything but just experience life. Whew. Yeah. Whew. Ciao. Anyways. Angel, what's up, Angel? Ooh, indeed. Gonna have to rewatch this because yeah. Yeah. If you are just joining, this is our spread for Cancer transits in a general sense. Well, Cancer and Pisces transits in a general sense, and also Mercury retrograde and this week's Cancer new moon. This is also the end of the chapter that started in January at the Cancer full moon. January or February, Cancer full moon, and the beginning of the new story, which is why I love seeing Ace of Knives here. Oh my gosh, thank you, Jim. Yes, please like the stream if you haven't already. which is what I love about seeing Ace of Swords here, because I mean, we got all this Gemini in the sky too. Venus is about to move into Gemini. So a lot more asking questions, a lot more verbalizing, a lot more considering other people's perspectives, a lot more being open to alternative truths from the one that you hold so close and dear to yourself. A lot more exploration and curiosity and childlike wonder with Venus and Gemini. And when you're doing that, all that Gemini stuff, because Venus, listen, as somebody who has Venus conjunct Jupiter in my own chart, Venus Jupiter conjunctions, so much merging, so much obsession, so much I become you and you become me and we lose ourselves. Don't do that. Don't do that. This card said don't do that. So maybe some of Five of Knives is also hold on, let me look at it again. There's some other information that I didn't look at earlier in this book. Knives. Conflict resolution, making amends, confrontation of evil, and exposure of treachery and virtuous wrath. Not playing nice, hinting at a loss, troublemakers, liars, haters, and frenemies. Transmute your passion and high-level energy into love, compassion, and grace. Share the love. How to become in alignment with the 5 and 5. Samaja, you just missed. You're going to have to go back and watch this one, babe. This one ate up. I already know. Ate up the girlies. But good to see you here. Ooh, Desiree. Yes, absolutely. Desiree says, this is resonating, but also reliving that this is the end of a story. For me, the 3 of baskets as the obstacle is like, are these really the relationships that you want? That is a great point. Great point. It goes back to the whole Taurus thing we were talking about with rejection and standing up. Like, yes, maybe you want them to like you, but bitch, do you like them? Samaje actually made some good points the other night, just talking about their own experience and this theme of Taurus and just Venus in general, how Venus can often experience itself through other people, which is kind of what we talk about with the 7th house as well. But I think for Venusians, like being in community and being in relationship is / can be such a big part of your identity that you're also sometimes taking on and this is my interpretation of what they were saying, but this is but there's also this aspect of like when you're constantly around other people and in the presence of other people, it's easy to just get lost in relationships. You know, it's easy to lose yourself in those relationships, or I'll even say, since we got the 10 of wands here, to also take on too much of other people's identity as your own. I'm definitely guilty of this, again, with the Venus Jupiter conjunction in my chart, but also as a Mercury heavy person, like mimicking other people and taking on other people's personality traits and sometimes other people's beliefs and ideas. Like, yeah, sometimes I can kind of also lose aspects of my identity in relationships. And I think that's a lot of what three of cups being in the center, I think that's a great observation, because it is just part of being in relationships. And this is something I talked about a lot while I was in the first few months of coaching school, where I was doing the work for myself, where they're talking about the conflict cycle in relationships is an inevitable part of relationships, because it's very Mars Venus in the way that you get close to someone, and at some point our need for individuation, our need for differentiation, kicks in, and we create conflict. It just is what we do. I've also heard others put it that being close to someone, like the consequence of being close to someone is friction, because you're literally close to someone. Sometimes that friction looks like hunching, which is cool. But also sometimes that friction looks like beefing. So a lot of this Five of Swords as the context is like, we need to be having constructive conflicts with people, constructive conflicts and repair with people. It's not just about, if we go back to this whole thing of like, you won, but you were an asshole about it. Like, you can be in a relationship that has zero conflict and that relationship be inauthentic and unhealthy because everybody is just self-abandoning or just conceding all the time, or one person's conceding more than the other to keep there from being conflict in the relationship. And all that's really happening with that is you're building up resentments because you're just holding your tongue constantly to keep the peace. So at some point, constructive conflict is a show of trust, a show of care, a show of compassion, a show of willingness to work through uncomfortable things with somebody. And conflict can also reveal whether or not this is a relationship you need to be in or not, because you can definitely initiate conflict with someone in good faith and with good intentions, and they will quickly show you that they are not actually willing to have a reciprocal relationship with you. They would only want to benefit from you, or only want to take advantage of something that you're offering, or they only want you in this relationship if you're being this particular way. And as soon as you venture outside of that role and that expectation that you either put yourself in or that they expect from you and only want that from you, then yeah, the minute that you try to be authentic, that relationship is going to fall apart. But again, with this whole Pisces and Cancer thing, like, are you ready? Not even are you ready? Are you willing to accept that sometimes the relationship itself doesn't need to be? Like, are you willing to accept that maybe the relationship needs to change? That's not to say you got to cut people off. This isn't cut people off energy to me. This is about boundaries to me more than anything. It's about boundaries, and it's about clarity around what is yours to what is your responsibility and what isn't your responsibility in terms of the needs that need to be met in this relationship. Because you can take too much ownership and responsibility for stuff that is really not your specific responsibility. It might be the responsibility of the other person to manage for themselves, and you're taking that on. But yeah. If you, all of that to say, if you find yourself being in a relationship where you can't have conflict because it always goes a particular way, that's also information for you to adapt to. So thank you for that, Desiree. The way January and February was another lifetime ago. Absolutely. Venus return. Okay, period. All of this has been internal feelings being articulated like, wow. Period. If they put me in the position of 10 of Wands, then no, maybe I don't like them. Exactly. You're only so strong. You're only so strong. So glad Venus is out of Pisces for this moment. Yeah. What even was that transit? That's a good question. Okay. Well, I don't know if there's anything else to say about that right now. I think that's also very fitting for Mars conjunct the South Node this week. Shedding those projections and expectations of you doing too much. Don't do all that. Why you doing all that? You ain't even gotta do all that. Stop. Quit it. Hell yeah, brother. Okay. Well, that's all I got. Ooh. That's all I got to say about that. Camera. There we go. Said I wanted to keep it short because Daddy is tired. I'm not gonna need to clean my apartment. Finish cleaning my apartment, and then I'm gonna take a nice salt bath this evening so I can be rested and ready to tackle this week. And I suggest you also do something that feels nourishing and nurturing to your body. And if you have someone else you can do that with, more power to you. Enjoy together. And I wish you all the dignity and self-respect required for you to regain a sense of control over your life and relationships, and a healthy sense of respect to always remember who the fuck you are in the face of people trying to tell you who you aren't. I love y'all so much. Thank you. If you haven't already liked the video, please like the video, subscribe to my channel, book a reading with me for August, join my Patreon. You can join as a free member or you can join as a paid subscriber for anywhere from $3 to $5 a month. Sometimes I post. If not, you have access to a whole bunch of other posts. And you help support my business as an astrologer, which is struggling. And tell a friend. If you really loved this live, tell a friend, share it with somebody, and let them get this good word too. Maybe it helps them out also. Thank y'all so much for hanging out with me this Sunday. I will talk to you guys next week. Bye.